Today in this video, I'm going to go over how to properly prep, mud, and tape this butt joint. Alright, so this is a butt joint, and it's called a butt joint because it's two cut edges right here that meet together versus factory edges, which have a little dip, and you can actually mud and tape right over the top of it and run it smooth. So what we need to do actually to mud and tape this, is we need to prep it. And the way we're going to prep it is we're going to cut. We're just going to take our knife here and we're going to cut about a 45-degree angle in there. Now, as you can see, I've cut about a 45 on both sides of this, right? As you look at the top, middle, down at the bottom. All right, so now that we got our drywall prepped, we're going to go ahead and do what's called a pre-fill. Now, for the pre-fill, we're going to use a Quickset mud. They usually come in a powder form, so you're actually going to have to mix it. But the idea is that this will actually set up and not shrink as much, whereas an all-purpose will actually shrink a little bit, and that's why we don't want to use it in the pre-fill, because it will crack potentially, and you'll see the bubbles and stuff. So like I said, we're going to use a Quickset today. I'm using some Easy Sand 45. Now this means that it will take 45 minutes to set up, and at that point I can go ahead and tape it. It still needs a full 24 hours to dry, but at least once it's set up, I can go ahead and put my tape over the top. Alright, so now that I've got her mixed, I'm just going to take my 6-inch knife here and fill in my joint and pull it tight. I'm going to scrape off as much excess as I can. Alright, so as you can see here, our goal really is just to fill this gap up with mud. We're not trying to feather it in either direction. We actually want to clean up as much as we can on the sides, but the idea is that we can just come back once this sets up, whether it's 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it is, and we can just apply our tape. Alright, so I actually ended up letting this sit overnight. I could have come back after about 45 minutes to actually put the second coat on, but I ran into a few other things that I had to take care of. But essentially what you're looking for is just to make sure this is set up. And usually if you touch it and it doesn't dimple in or it doesn't leave a mark, that usually means it's ready to, it's set up and you can actually put the next coat on. But it's not going to look dry necessarily. It may actually still look kind of wet and darker. But as long as, like I said, it doesn't dimple in or it doesn't leave a mark after you touch it, you're fine to go ahead and do the next coat. All right, so there are a few other things that will actually affect your setup time. One being, of course, the thickness of the mud you put on. So this was a larger gap, and it actually took more like an hour to set up versus the 45 minutes that is set on the bag. The temperature of the water that you use to mix the mud can also have an effect. So if you use hotter water, it will set up faster. And of course, the temperature around you, right? So if it's 80 degrees in the room, it's going to set up a little faster versus if it's 45 or 50 degrees in the room. So those are just things you might want to think about. All right, so the next step is just to tape this. Now, I'm using just an all-purpose mud that I picked up at the local hardware store. And then I put a little water into it. So it will kind of drip off. I want it pretty thin when I actually start putting tape on. But we're just going to go ahead and get this taped. And we'll start by just putting some mud on here. All right, so now you can start pretty much at the top or the bottom, putting your tape down. I'm going to start at the top usually because the bottom gets hidden. But you want to make sure that where you fold, the fold creased in the middle is going to go towards the wall and not away from the wall, as it will bubble possibly over time. So you want to make sure that crease is going towards the wall. I've got a little mark up there where my actual joint is at. Go down to my bottom here. I'm just going to take this and tear that off. All right, so next I like to go to about the middle of the wall. Put this in there, and then I'm going to go down and scoop that down. And I'm also going to go up with it, pull it tight. I'm going to clean up any excess I have on the sides as well. Quick. All right, so another thing you could have done is you could have just applied the tape directly to the Quickset mud. Instead of doing this in 2 steps, you would have only done it in 1 step. The reason I chose not to do it that way is because there was a larger gap back there, and I wanted to make sure I had that gap filled in with Quickset mud before I applied the tape. But that is a way you could have gone. I don't really recommend it for larger gaps. Again, I want to make sure that mud back in there is set up and isn't going to crack on me. So that would be an option. All right, so at this point, our next step would be to just let this dry for about 24 hours. Then we'll come back, apply a 2nd and 3rd coat, and feather this out and get it flush with our wall. But really, that's all there is to it. If you want to check out my video on how to apply the 2nd and 3rd coat, I'll put a link in the description. I'll also put a link above me here. But that's, like I said, that's pretty much all there is to pre-filling and applying the tape. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you click that link below and become one, and we'll catch you on the next one.